Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Super Paranormal Chronicles. I'm the host. My name's Lee, and tonight I'm more than delighted to have Daniel Cahoon with me. Daniel is the podcast host of Magickal Journey. Daniel, welcome.
Hey, well, thank you, and thank you for having me.
It is my absolute pleasure. I know we've been playing with certain dates over a while, and we've been keeping in touch. So it's finally good to get you nailed down and sort of like
Yes,
get you in one position at one time that's good for you.
right, right.
Yeah,
I'm glad it did work out. Yeah.
100%. So when I interview people, I always like to ask them what happened in their life to start their paranormal road. So
Mm,
if you want to kind of like go into how things started for you, and then we'll go from there.
okay. Well, geez, I was about 7 years old. The first time I had a paranormal experience, I really wasn't sure what it was, but I did know that it was something unusual and something that probably should not have happened. It didn't quite fit with what I called normal at that point. Um, about 3 years later, the one of the two parents who adopted me passed, and this kind of set me on a road of discovery because I was very confused. We did not. There wasn't a whole lot of discussion about the afterlife or death or anything like that growing up. So it was all new territory for me. And during this time of just of kind of questioning, everything, there was a lot of things that started happening, a lot of paranormal activity that started churning. And I was like, things like my analog television would start changing channels by itself. And I'm like, wait a minute, what's going on here? We didn't have remotes back then. The television, you had to turn the knob to get to do its thing, and here it was flipping back and forth through the four stations we had. And I was like, that's not okay. uh, and from there it just kind of escalated. So that's really how I got started. It led me down the path of exploring different avenues, um, Christianity, Hinduism, Buddhism, Judaism, all the isms, and some of the ain'ts, and in the process, um, kind of coming to a point where I agreed somewhere along the line to continue exploring. And yeah, that led to the uh, the whole experience of investigation and an exploration of deep diving paranormal.
Yeah, and the fact that you mentioned like analog TVs, so I can so relate. Yeah, I think I was the remote control in my house when I was a kid. So go and turn the channel over to channel 3. But at what point did you realize, you said that you go through all these different religions.
Mhm.
At what point did you realize that you wanted to really dig deep into the paranormal world and become an investigator and to try and find out what is happening with all these different incidents that are happening?
The moment that I really, like, if I can pinpoint the moment, was right after my stepmother had, like, came to me and said, I these things keep going on and I keep checking on you. I hear people talking in your room or walking across the floor, and I go in to check to see if everything's okay. You're sound asleep. The room's dark. Nothing's going on. And I was like, okay, so these things are manifesting and other people are experiencing them. It's not just about me, it's about everybody around me experiencing something. And that's kind of where I started going, okay, I guess I need to find out, what the cause and core of this thing is. And it kind of led me from there to starting to explore other places, other people's experiences, and really start to investigate, you know, other phenomena going on that was affecting more people. And that's where I guess I really kind of exploded onto the scene, and started working with regressionists and all kinds of things to kind of explore the different possibilities out there.
It's interesting you say that because yeah, if you speak to all these experts, so to speak, yeah, they will say that yeah, ghosts and spirits are still on this plane because they've got unfinished business or they've got yeah a message that wants to put out. What's your kind of opinion about those kind of comments?
You know, I kind of feel like, first of all, there's this broad understanding of, people using terms like ghosts and spirits. And talking about how, there are people that are earthbound for whatever reason, either because of trauma or maybe their desire to continue relationship with those that are living that they knew, or even to protect and and watch out for those who are still living. There's a lot of different reasons why people why spirits become earthbound. Uh, when it comes to other people's ideas and opinions about the paranormal, I don't know. I just kind of like, I let people believe and think the way they want to, and hopefully they will research and investigate to come up with the answers to what it is that they're dealing with. Because not, I think the biggest problem we have in the paranormal world is, you know, some people want to label everything as a demon, and it's like, oh, this is all demonic, and when you get into communication with people who are no longer in this level of life, you know, it, they start slinging words like necromancy and all these kinds of things. And I'm kind of like, okay, well, that's great. That's where you're at. But not all of us feel that way. And it's okay.
Yeah, because one thing that I find interesting, and I tell so many people, is you know, you've just mentioned about people thinking that everything is a demon, and people that get scratched
Mhm.
automatically think it's a malevolent entity. And I always kind of flip that particular coin and say, well, if I want to get your attention and you've got your back to me, I'm going to call your name, like Daniel. And if you don't hear me, because one of us may be dead and the other one's living, I'm going to shout louder. And if you still don't hear me, the next natural thing is for me to put my hand out
Mhm.
and to tap you on the shoulder, tap you on the arm. So the way that I kind of flip that coin is it may not be a malevolent action. It might be an action of a spirit or whatever they are trying to get your attention just by touching you. It doesn't necessarily mean it's there to hurt you. And when I tell people that, they go, huh, I never thought about that.
Mm.
And it's a very good point. And like you say, every man and his dog likes to, yeah, if something happens, something falls off a shelf or something gets launched through the air, it's a demon. No, it is not. So, not everything on this planet is bad, and not everything on this planet is a demon. But the amount of people that think that it is. But yeah, have you ever experienced anything that's truly malevolent?
I I can say definitely there's a couple of times when I've run across things that did not have my best interest in mind. They were not friendly energies, and then I kind of I don't really want to point the demon finger at people, but then I just kind of go, okay, we got an attitude issue here. We need to work on this, and go from there. Because here's the thing. So, you know, case in point, let's talk about one case that people are very familiar with, the Annabelle doll. Like the real first negative experience that happened with this particular doll was the result of somebody who was not really knowledgeable, upsetting the doll, if you will, and the process, the experience led to a childish outburst. There was, the doll was thrown, the doll was made fun of in a sense, and the doll had a tantrum, and in the process, there was scratching and there was, some pretty heavy interaction in that moment. When you get into talking about, these energies reacting like that, having what I call a tantrum, having that childish moment, you know, we need to be aware of the cause. There's cause and effect going on there. Are they doing it because, you just threw it across the room and said, I'm not scared of you, and taunted it? Is it something that has something deeper in it than just a negative reaction happening? I think that's where a lot of people kind of they start going, okay, well, you know, we this happened and the doll reacted this way. It must be a demon. You know, it,
Yeah, it's interesting that you mention about Annabelle because yeah, we both know that she's been in the news recently,
yes.
and every person or a lot of people were saying that that incident happened because of the doll.
Mm.
Now, I actually made a comment on one particular post and by saying, okay, so if you think that the doll, yeah, this happened because of the doll, are you telling me that if there was a car crash outside the building where the doll was, are you going to blame the doll or are you going to blame bad driving? And then all I got then was crickets. Like I didn't even get a response because it's like, yeah, I'm being logical about this. You cannot blame a doll for every misadventure that happens in or around the location that the doll's out. It's just, yeah, it's as simple as that. But we also can't control other people's imagination, emotions,
Mhm.
and feelings. And yeah, we both know that they're just gonna go on that particular road that they want to go on, and no matter what anybody else says is going to change that.
Right. Well, and I think a lot of people, let's talk about the generalization factor here. Like Robert the doll is another example of, a haunted object that people really don't understand the dynamics of at all. Okay, so Annabelle is more like an egregore, if you will. This is an object that, because energy has been fed into the doll and fed into the doll starts manifesting a presence. It literally starts, the energy starts building in the doll, and it becomes by proxy a being. On the other hand, you have objects like Robert the doll, who it's believed that Robert actually is a portal, or has a portal inside of him. So that these beings come through the portal, and they act and react through Robert the doll. So you're talking about two different types of things here, two different types of beings, if you will. One created manifestation from people feeding this object energy. The other one, a portal inside this object that allows beings to come in and come through and reside within. Robert has several different beings attached and operating through the doll at any given time. So again, it's about perception, understanding. When it gets to things like Annabelle, now you've got, instead of like a small group of people feeding Annabelle, you've got huge audiences feeding Annabelle. So you know when this happens, people do start attributing almost godlike energy to these creatures, to these manifestations. So with Annabelle, you've got people believing that she's burning down plantations, tornadoes, or she's spawning tornadoes. She's causing people to pass away because of whatever situation, contributing godlike energy to this thing. So in the result of that is that there are manifestations, big manifestations, that may happen around Annabelle, but are not necessarily attributed to being necessarily about Annabelle as much as about the mass consciousness around Annabelle.
Yeah, and I think you can say exactly the same about something like the Dybbuk box. Yeah, that's
Mhm.
got the same kind of stories attached to it and phenomena attached to it, and people don't want to touch it, don't want to go near it. Yeah, and
Mhm.
it's weird how you can have a doll 1 minute and then you've got a box the next. Yeah,
Mhm.
and it's weird how people just, whether it's true or not, they will just come out and say, well, I think this,
Yeah.
but they've got no substantial evidence to back these ideas and these stories up. And
Right.
the Dybbuk box is on display at a museum, and the amount of, I felt really bad after seeing it or having touched it. But is that personal perception, or is that something to actually to do with the object itself?
Right. Right. A lot of times I think you know, if you, first of all, let me say this: going to a haunted object museum, it, it can be interesting, it can be fun. I'm sure there are things there that you will not see anywhere else. Personally, my first thought on that is err on the side of caution when you go to those things, and realize that, you know, you may be coming in contact with things that you're not prepared to come in contact with. You know, you may wind up in a situation that you were not prepared for if you are not educated before you go into those places. And so erring on the side of caution is always a really good idea. You know, anytime we want to do a fun activity with the paranormal, it's the same thing with going to um, public the public investigations and so forth. You know, again, one of those things that's a fun activity to do, yeah, but you don't want to do it without having some education behind, you know, how to protect yourself, what the what was the history of that building, what is, you know, the history of, you know, what's the lore of the spirits that are supposedly there. You know, what are you potentially going to have attract to you in the process? Because hitchhikers are a thing. And I think a lot of people just assume, hey, I'm going to this fun activity, you know, and I'm going to get my K2 and my dowsing rods and, you know, and whatever other equipment, and we're going to go find us a ghost, you know, and you know, it's great. Record some data, get some, you know, some evidence, you know, by all means, have fun with it, but be aware. That's the big thing, is be aware of what you're dealing with and understand that, yeah, it can be fun, but there's real coincidences to things. Okay, you can't just like walk into a building that, you know, that has, you know, a history, a gruesome history at times, and say, "Oh, well, you know, nothing's going to happen because, you know, that's what this is about. This is what's supposed to be. You know, it's for entertainment purposes only, right? That's what we're told." And then, you know, you find out later, oh, yeah, there's there was a coincidence to that.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say that, because I always tell people that there's kind of two different groups of people. There's the group that will go out purely to be scared and to have a fun time and not kind of understand the consequences. And then you've got the other group, the group that will want to do some genuine research and investigation. And they've paid for the equipment that they use. They've got the cameras, they've got the tri-fields, and they want to actually prove the existence rather than, okay, yeah, let's go out tonight for shits and giggles and just go out to be scared. Whereas, yes, nowadays there's a lot of money involved with that,
Mhm.
but does it really do any benefit towards that this particular like occupation, so to speak?
Right, right. That's the thing that you really, I mean, as an investigator, as somebody who actually goes in looking for, you know, data, looking for physical evidence, looking for, you know, information that will give me something to sink my teeth into. You know, I have to, first of all, I have to be ready to be disappointed. Yeah. Not every place is going like the last couple of places I went to, honestly, like I got a little bit of activity with a cat ball or two, maybe a little bit of K2 meter activity, and the biggest amount of activity that I got at the one place in particular, which was a haunted prison of all things, was my lightning detector recorded several disturbances, and several strikes. And so, yeah, I got some data. It wasn't very conclusive data, but I got some data. And and some stuff happened. So, was there, some really great footage? No. Was there like some amazing, image that popped up on? No. So I have to look at these things, and I have to decide. Okay, so with the data that I have or don't have, you know, what can I conclude from this? And one of the things people are always asking me, do you feel like this place is haunted? Do you feel like that place is haunted? And a lot of times what I have to tell them is, according to the data that I have and according to what I recorded there, I can't conclusively say one way or the other that I feel that there is something there. Um, and then I get people going, well, that's kind of a cop out. No, it's not. And here's why. Because the evidence, the the information gathered was not enough to justify calling it anything other than what it was, inconclusive. You know, had had I had maybe some really great imagery, was there scratching and knocking and howling going on? Was there equipment being interacted with, in a fairly aggressive manner or whatever? Then I could probably say, hey, there's some interesting energy there. But without that, you have to, again, err on the side of caution and say, you know what, I can't conclusively say one way or the other. And I think that's where a lot of people, they go out and they want this evidence and they want to get concrete proof everywhere they go. It's not always going to be that way. As a matter of fact, you may have one out of every 10 places you come up with enough of evidence, enough of data that you can come to a conclusion on.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say that, because out of all the evidence that we've obtained, we always try to debunk it as much as we can. If we can't debunk it through natural phenomena, we don't say, okay, this place is categorically haunted. We just go, this evidence is going to go on the unexplained pile.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, that unexplained pile just gets bigger and bigger and bigger because it's stuff that you can't explain. If something happens and somebody's keyed a walkie-talkie, you know that probably that interference is going to cause one of your devices to go off. But if you're in the middle of a field, for example, and you've got a device that's going off, you're not going to. There's not going to be any power cables. There's not going to be anything that you can categorically debunk.
Right.
So it has to be unexplained, and people don't realize that. And like you say, all this data and all this evidence, nobody is going to say 100% hand on heart, yep, this place is haunted. Because you can't do that, because you've got to take everything into account. You can't just go, oh, the cat ball went off once. Yep, that proves it's haunted. No, it doesn't. We was at an investigation in the US in June, and I had an incident that I've told a few people. We'd finished the investigation, and I'm in a four-poster bed by myself, and turn the light out. And because I'd been moving about, I felt the blankets actually settle. Didn't think anything of it. It's the blankets. But then about a couple of minutes later, I felt a really heavy sensation on the bed. Enough for me to open my eyes because I thought, oh, one of the other guys has come into the bedroom, didn't hear the door. But then when I opened my eyes, I saw this white, whatever it was, go past. But I'd only been in bed no more than 3 minutes. So, there's no way that I was asleep. I wasn't really that tired. We hadn't been drinking. But can I prove that? I experienced it personally, but I can't say, yeah, I'm going to tick that box to say this place is definitely haunted, because it's a personal experience for everybody. And that's what the paranormal basically is. It's not very often that you get multiple people experiencing the same thing at the same time. It tends to be individuals getting most of the experiences, and 9 times out of 10 the cameras are not running. And yeah, investigators' nightmare. Damn it, I didn't turn the cameras on.
Oh yeah.
So can you actually remember your first official investigation?
Wow. Honestly, I don't. I mean, when you say first official investigation, like the very first investigation that I did of anything paranormal was actually somebody who we loosely called a contactee, who had reported a UFO encounter. And I do remember, like, the interview itself, asking the questions I had to ask, gathering the information to kind of get some context to the sighting itself, and and do what we do, which is basically putting together a picture of what happened in a case like that. But again, I mean, when you talk about things like that, there's very little, if any, physical evidence a lot of times. I mean, you can get some readings, if there was, some sort of like low contact or whatever, say you have something actually land or whatever, you may be able to get some readings. There may be some burn marks. There may be some indication that something landed in a particular spot. But other than that, you're really not going to get much other than, again, somebody's perspective of what happened, basically. So that was really the first investigation that I did. Like I said, it was kind of, for me, it was more about collecting perspective data than anything else. Unfortunately, again, there was no physical evidence really. No treetops missing,
Yeah.
nothing like that. So
Yeah.
it was definitely what some people would probably consider a very that
Anticlimactic.
yes
that word. Yeah.
experience.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's interesting that you mentioned UFOs, because again, 9 times out of 10, these experiences that people, or these things that people see, are singular people. But you watch some of the TV shows and people go, "Oh my god, that's a UFO," and I'm going, "No, it's Chinese lanterns, or it's drones or something that can quite easily be explained. And a perfect example is the SpaceX Starlink train. You've got a row of lights going through the sky. And if you're not familiar with Elon Musk and Starlink, and you see this row of lights going through the sky, you're going to go, what the hell? And you probably are going to think that it is alien in origin, whereas in fact, depending where you are in the world, there's been a SpaceX launch the previous night or something like that. And I think people, I don't want to use the word gullible, but people are far too easy to jump on the UFO or the ghost or the cryptid bandwagon far too easily without doing their due diligence towards, well, what could it actually be really?
Exactly.
Yeah. Exactly. So at what point did you decide that you were going to tell the world about all this and you created the Magickal Journey?
I was flipping through YouTube one day and just like going through interviews and watching some things, and I came across an interview, another podcaster being interviewed about their experiences, and it just kind of like struck me, wow, this could be an interesting direction to go in. And so I sat there, watched the interview. It went well. It was a fun interview. And, so I reached out to the host and, sent them an email, and we went back and forth a couple of times with emails to each other. And I finally I said, you know what? I'm just going to do this. I'm going to go all out, and we're going to do this. So I invited this guy on to the very first episode I did, and and said, hey, look, I really want to do this. I want you on in the first episode because, quite frankly, you're the one that's inspiring me to do this. So what better time than now? And that's really how I all got started. I cringe every time I see that first episode because the opening, oh God, I just go, wow, and this week will have been a year that Magickal Journey Podcast has been around. And, you know, tonight I'm kind of revisiting the entire year, and I'm just like, I looked back on that first episode the other day again, and I went, "Oh God, that was horrible." But here we are a year later, though.
Yeah, exactly, and and that's a great milestone because quite a few of them fall by the wayside well before that. Because I know I released episode 33 tonight at like 5 p.m. local time. And it's really weird how, and I've told this story before, when I first started, I thought to myself, right, I'm not just going to stick to one subject. I'm not just going to stick to ghosts or haunted locations. I'm going to reach out to as many people as possible. So I Googled the word paranormal, and there were so many different subsections. And I thought, okay, I'm going to talk to as many different people as I can. So my initial theory was, right, okay, I'm going to, a friend of mine who's got his own podcast, he went, create 3. 3 to 4 to start off with, so people don't have to wait for the second or third episode. So I got 4, and I was extremely nervous to start off with. So I had a couple of friends jump on as kind of like co-hosts, and then we were just bouncing conversation. And then I had my first guest, and then I kind of moved forward, and it very quickly became apparent because I was just reaching out to every man and his dog. I've got a new podcast, yada, yada, yada. And I got so many people saying yes. I was so overwhelmed. And then I thought, okay, I can't do it every 2 weeks. I have to do it every week because I was getting so many people. And in all these 33 episodes, I've spoken to people, near-death experiences. I believe that AJ.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I've spoken to people, who just dropped into a normal conversation that he'd been abducted by an alien, but we're talking about UFOs. So I've got to invite him back for a second one to talk about his alien abduction. I've spoken to mediums and to people related to fairies and stuff like that, and it's fascinating how many different subjects that that paranormal bubble, so to speak, encompasses.
Absolutely.
So, if you had to pick one particular subject within the paranormal that you said was your favorite, which one would you pick and why?
Oh boy. That's really hard because there's so many. Honestly, I guess for me right now, cryptids would be the thing that really gets me excited the most. And the reasoning is really simple, actually. The area that I live in is there's a lot of lore around cryptids. And, there's this kind of mystique and unfortunately, because of the culture of the area, cryptids have you been lumped into that demonized category. So for me, is definitely the cryptids, and it would definitely be, as far as the reason, trying to figure out exactly what they are and what their purpose is, because I don't necessarily believe that they fall into the Genesis 4-6 category. Um, so that's where I'm kind of camping at lately.
Yeah, because I know when I first started, naively, when you speak about the paranormal, you just automatically go to ghosts and spirits. You just automatically go to it. And a lot of people don't realize, like you said, you've got the cryptids, you've then got the UFOs, you've then got like near death experiences. And then
Mhm.
all these other subjects can get broken down into different sorts of cryptids or different sorts of apparitions, different sorts of UFOs, because UFOs now are not just UFOs, you've got USOs and and aerial anomalies and all that. So it's all getting broken down even more, which opens up a bigger and bigger and bigger can of worms with regard to every sort of subject that you talk about. So over these 100 episodes that you've done, I'm going to really put you on the spot now. Can you actually pick one that gave you the wow factor? One particular episode?
Actually, I can tell you. Hold on a second. Let me dig it out right quick. Because there is one that, first of all, the way I ran across it was quite by accident on TikTok. Ashley Inc. did an episode or a TikTok related to this time glitch episode that happened in South Georgia, and I immediately got in touch with the lady who experienced this, and I said, "Look, I don't know what you just experienced, but I want to talk to you about it on my show." And episode 72 um, definitely was, for me, the strange case of time slip in Valdosta, Georgia, was definitely the episode that I'm still to this day going, I don't know what that was. It makes no sense. The fact that there was outstanding evidence behind this case and that there was a living, breathing human being on the other side of the story who had come forward and acknowledged that this did happen in his family's life as well. Those things all together came about in a way that made episode 72 the episode that just wrecked me for life. Like the time glitch thing,
Yeah.
I don't get it.
And I am so glad that you mentioned about time slips, because I didn't know that they existed. And I read an article in a magazine and I'm like, oh, I need to find out more about this. So now you've told me about it. Guess what I'm doing while you're doing your episode? I'm going to go and watch episode 72.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's
You
like,
gotta see it.
it's things like that that keep us involved in what we do, because you'd be doing, you know, yeah, a cryptid story, a cryptid story, a ghost story, a ghost story, UFO, and then someone comes boom and comes out with a time slip, like story, and you just go, what? What the hell? And you've not even got any explanation. And sometimes when I talk to people, and they will come out with something that's happened to them or they've seen, and I just like, I don't know what to say next. And it's those kind of stories that make all these podcasts work.
Absolutely.
And that's why we enjoy doing what we do. That's why I'm talking to you now. And that's why you're celebrating your 100th episode tonight. But when this goes out, it'll probably be 100 and something. Yeah. So I know that you are quite busy tonight. So I'm just going to round up. So what's next for Daniel and the Magickal Journey?
So, Magickal Journey Podcast, I got to tell you, my goal for this next year is to, first of all, I want to do more field work and really get out there and throw some investigation into the mix. There's some areas here in my where I live at, land between the lakes, East Tennessee, a lot of things that I really want to deep dive into. For me personally, I really would like to see you know, a little bit more of work on my part with writing a book. That would be amazing. I really
That would
want
be
to do
cool.
that.
Yeah.
And, and deep dive into my previous work in a way that brings it up front into the show, because there's a lot of cases that I've investigated over the years or researched over the years that I feel like still needs to be brought forward. And those are the things coming up to watch for with Magickal Journey.
And that sounds really cool. And how cool would it be if your first book was about time slips? Just saying, just putting that out there, just putting it out there. Let me know when it gets published. I'll be the first one to buy it. Daniel, I'd like to congratulate you on your 100th episode, which is it going out live tonight or is it?
I will be live tonight, definitely.
Okay, I think I might have to put the time slip one on hold a little bit and watch your 100th episode. But sir, thank you for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I would really like to carry on this conversation and get you back in season 2 that's already being planned. And then we can continue this conversation. But for now, thank you for your time and have a great episode and a great rest of the evening.
Thank you for having me.
You're most welcome.